Mr. Bennett, you're her emergency contact. I hadn't seen Hannah Whitmore since the night we graduated high school. 17 years of silence. And somehow my name was the only name she had written down. But while she was still unconscious on that operating table, while surgeons were fighting to keep her alive, Grant Keller was already at her office, taking her files, calling her landlord, canceling everything she had spent 6 years building. He didn't wait 1 hour. She almost died. And his first move was to make sure nothing she loved would survive her. Tell me your city in the comments. I want to see how far Hannah's story reaches. Before I tell you how I found out, before I tell you what I walked into that night, drop your city into the comments right now. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do, because what happened next changed everything. I thought I knew about Promise's family and the people we never stop loving. I want to tell you something honest before I start. I am not the kind of man who talks about his feelings easily. I build things. Houses, staircases, load-bearing walls. I like problems that have clear solutions. A warped board, you can replace a crack in a foundation. You can repair a measurement that either fits or it doesn't. Feelings don't work like that. And so for most of my adult life, I kept them somewhere quiet and distant, the way you keep old boxes in the back of a closet. You know they're there, you just stop opening them. That changed on a November night when I was 35 years old, alone inside a half-renovated Victorian house in Portland, and my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. I was on my knees, fixing a staircase third riser from the bottom, which had been creaking loud enough to fail an inspection scheduled for that Friday. The rain was coming down hard outside. You could hear it against the old windows, that thick November rain that Oregon does better than anywhere. I had sawdust on my jeans, a pencil behind my ear, and approximately 12 things on my mind, none of which involved the past. The number had a Portland area code, but no name attached to it. I assumed it was a contract calling, late about materials, or maybe a client who couldn't sleep and needed to redesign their kitchen at 9 in the evening. I thought about letting it ring out. I don't know why I picked up. Is this Noah Bennett? The voice was a woman's calm professional, the kind of calm that comes from saying difficult things to strangers many times a day. Yeah, I said. That's me. Mr. Bennett, I'm calling from St. Catherine Medical Center. I'm one of the nurses in our surgical unit. She paused just briefly. I want to ask you something before I explain further. Do you know a woman named Hannah Whitmore? Everything in me stopped, not slowed, stopped, like someone had reached into my chest and pressed a button I didn't know existed. Hannah Whitmore. I hadn't said that name out loud, and I had to actually count 17 years. I hadn't thought about her in a long time or so, I had told myself. But the moment I heard it, I realized I had been wrong about that. The memory was right there, immediate and intact, like it had been waiting behind a door I had simply kept closed. Yes, I said. I knew her. A long time ago. Why, what's happened? Mr. Bennett, Ms. Whitmore was involved in a serious accident this evening. She suffered a cerebral aneurysm while driving and lost consciousness at the wheel. Her vehicle struck a concrete divider. She is currently in emergency surgery. I stood up. I don't remember deciding to stand. I was just suddenly on my feet. Is she going to be okay? I can't give you a prognosis at this time. What I can tell you is that she is in surgery with our best team, and we are doing everything possible. Another pause and then, Mr. Bennett, the reason I'm calling is that you are listed as her emergency contact. Your name and number are the only emergency contact information in her medical profile. I actually laughed. It was a short, involuntary sound, not because anything was funny, but because the statement was so far outside anything I expected that my brain didn't know how to process it. I was standing in a house that wasn't mine, covered in sawdust, holding a phone, and a nurse was telling me that a woman I hadn't spoken to in 17 years had put my name down as the person to call when her life was in danger. I'm sorry, I said. Did you say I'm her emergency contact? Yes, sir. That has to be a mistake. We went to high school together. I moved away after graduation. We haven't been in contact for it's been almost 2 decades. I understand, the nurse said, and she did sound like she understood. But your information is current. It appears to have been updated within the last year. That stopped me again. Within the last year. Not a forgotten old record. Not something left in a database from the 90s. She had looked at that form sometime in the past 12 months, seen my name, and decided to leave it there. "Why, Mr. Bennett," the nurse said gently, "I know this is a great deal to take in, but is there anyone else, any family, any close friends that you might be able to reach on her behalf? We're having difficulty locating next of kin." I thought about what I knew of Hannah's family, which was mostly what I'd known at 17. Her father had died during our junior year. Her mother had fallen into a deep grief that eventually became a kind of emotional disappearance. She had a younger brother, Caleb, but their relationship had always been complicated even back then. "I don't know her current situation," I told the nurse. "I can try to find out, but I'll come. I'll come to the hospital." I don't know why I said it. It came out before I had decided anything. "We appreciate that," the nurse said. "Please ask for the surgical unit when you arrive. And Mr. Bennett, please drive carefully. The roads are very slick tonight." I hung up. I stood in the middle of that unfinished staircase for probably 2 full minutes, just holding my phone, listening to the rain hitting the windows. Hannah Whitmore. I hadn't let myself think of her in years. Or I had tried not to. There's a difference between forgetting someone and training yourself not to reach for their memory. I had been doing the second thing for a long time. We met when we were 14. She sat 2 rows ahead of me in English class, and she used to argue with the teacher about book interpretations in a way that was genuinely fearless. She had this green-eyed directness about her. She would say exactly what she thought, and then wait very calmly to see what you would do with it. Most people found it intimidating. I found it the most interesting thing I'd ever encountered in a classroom. We became close slowly, the way real friendships do. Study sessions that turned into long walks. Long walks that turned into the kind of conversations you can only have when you're 17, and you still believe that talking about something deeply enough can actually change it. We were in love with each other. I know that now, in a way, I didn't quite have the language for then. But by the time I understood it clearly, everything had already fallen apart. Her father died in the spring of junior year, a sudden heart attack. No warning, no goodbye. Hannah was 16, and her world simply collapsed. Her mother stopped functioning. Caleb was 12 and needed looking after. Hannah became the adult in the household overnight, and I watched her carry that weight with a kind of quiet ferocity that was both heartbreaking and extraordinary. I tried to be there. But there are things a teenager can't fix, and there are griefs too large for a 17-year-old boy to understand, and I made mistakes. Not dramatic ones. Just the ordinary mistakes of someone who doesn't know how to sit with pain without trying to solve it. After graduation, Hannah stayed. She had to. Her family needed her, and leaving wasn't something she could consider. I had a scholarship to a university in Boston. She told me to go. She said it clearly, calmly, with those green eyes that never wavered, even when the rest of her was falling apart. "Go, Noah. This isn't your life to put on hold." I went. We wrote for a while. Then the letters got shorter. Then we stopped writing. And then the silence between us became so long and so established that breaking it started to feel like it would require more courage than either of us had. I told myself she had moved on. I told myself she was fine. I told myself a lot of things. I drove to St. Catherine Medical Center through the worst of the rain, and I did not drive carefully. I drove fast, gripping the wheel harder than I needed to, replaying the nurse's words in my head. Her medical profile, updated within the last year. Your name and number. Why Hannah? After everything. After 17 years of silence. Why me? The hospital was bright and clean, and full of the particular quiet of serious places. I told the woman at the front desk who I was looking for. She directed me to the surgical floor. I took the elevator up and walked down a corridor that smelled of antiseptic and floor wax, and I saw a gurney being wheeled at speed through a set of double doors, and in the half-second before the doors swung shut, I saw her face. Older. Of course older. But undeniably, unmistakably, Hannah. I stood absolutely still in that hallway while the doors closed. She had tubes and monitors and people moving around her, and she was unconscious, and I had not seen her face in 17 years. And in that moment, I understood something that I had been very carefully not understanding for a long time. I had never completely let go of her. A woman appeared at my elbow, mid-40s, dark hair pulled back carrying a tablet. "Mr. Bennett." "Yeah. I'm Marisol Vega. I'm a social worker here at St. Catherine. Do you have a minute?" I looked at the closed double doors. "Is she?" "She's in surgery. It's going to be several hours. We need to talk while we wait." She guided me to a small room off the corridor, not a waiting room, exactly, more of a consultation space. 2 chairs, a table, a box of tissues. The kind of room where people get bad news delivered professionally. "Mr. Bennett, I understand this is an unusual situation. You've been listed as Ms. Whitmore's emergency contact, which puts you in a complicated position legally and practically. I already told the nurse I think it might be a mistake. We haven't been—" "It's not a mistake," Marisol said. Her information was deliberately updated. "But that's actually not the most urgent thing I need to talk to you about right now." She looked at me steadily. "Mr. Bennett, Hannah has a daughter. Her name is Lily. She's 10 years old." I stared at her. A daughter. Hannah had a daughter. Lily was at her mother's community art center this evening when the accident happened. Marisol continued. "She's currently staying with a neighbor, an elderly woman named Mrs. Garfield, who lives in the same building as Hannah and Lily. Mrs. Garfield is very kind, but she's 78 years old and not able to manage a child for any extended period. That arrangement can last approximately 2 days before it becomes unsuitable." "What happens after 2 days?" Marisol looked at me with the honest directness of someone who has had this conversation enough times to know that softening it doesn't help. "If we cannot identify an approved caregiver for Lily, she will be placed in emergency foster care." The words landed like something physical. She'd go into foster care while Hannah is in surgery. "It's a last resort, but yes, it's a real possibility if we don't have a responsible adult who can step in." "What about family, father, grandparents?" "Lily's father has not been in the picture for several years. Hannah's mother passed away 2 years ago. She has a brother, Caleb, but we haven't been able to reach him yet, and our preliminary check suggests he and Hannah have been estranged for some time." I put my hands on the table in front of me. I could hear my own breathing. "Ms. Vega," I said slowly. "I'm a single man. I live alone. I build houses for a living. I do not have children. I have not spent significant time around children. I know nothing about Hannah's current life, her daughter's needs, her daily routine, or anything that would qualify me to look after a 10-year-old. "I understand," Marisol said. "Then why are you telling me this?" She folded her hands on the table and looked at me with those direct professional eyes. "Because you're here, Mr. Bennett, and because Hannah chose your name as the person to call. I'm not asking you whether you feel qualified. I'm not asking whether this is convenient or comfortable. I'm asking one simple question." She paused. "Is there one safe adult in this situation who is willing to show up?" I didn't answer right away. I looked at the table. I thought about the staircase I'd left unfinished in that Victorian house. I thought about the inspection on Friday. I thought about the project manager who was going to be furious when I didn't show up tomorrow morning. I thought about every entirely reasonable reason why this was not my problem. And then I thought about Hannah's face through those double doors. Older, smaller than I remembered, completely unaware that I was standing 40 feet away because she had put my name on a form sometime in the last 12 months. There's something I should tell you. Something I've never actually said out loud to anyone. At our high school graduation in the parking lot afterward, while her mother was crying, and Caleb was somewhere being 12, and I was about to get into my parents' car and leave Oregon. Hannah and I said goodbye. We stood on the pavement in the June heat, and we said all the polite, brave things that young people say when they're pretending they're not devastated. And then, at the very end, just before I got in the car, I turned around. "Hannah." She looked at me. "If you ever need me, if things ever get bad enough that you pick up a phone, I'll come. It doesn't matter how much time has passed, I'll come." She smiled at me. It was the saddest smile I have ever seen on a person. "I know you mean that," she said. "I know you do." She never called, Not once in 17 years. But she had put my name on a form. She had sat down sometime in the past year, opened a medical profile and typed my number into the emergency contact field. She hadn't called. But she had remembered. And now I was sitting in this consultation room, being asked whether I was willing to show up, and I knew with the same certainty that I knew whether a wall could hold weight that if I walked out of this hospital and let Lily go into foster care while Hannah was in surgery, I would not be able to live inside that decision for the rest of my life. What would showing up actually mean? I asked Marisol. Practically. She leaned forward slightly. In the short term tomorrow and the next day, it would mean picking up Lily from Mrs. Garfield's, staying with her at Hannah's apartment, making sure she gets to school, keeping her life as stable as possible while her mother is hospitalized. We would run a background check on you tonight. And long term. That depends entirely on Hannah's recovery and on what other family options emerge. We'll reassess constantly. You would not be signing anything permanent. You would simply be choosing to be present. I looked at her for a long moment. Run the background check, I said. She almost smiled. I already started it when you walked through the door. I went to the waiting room then. I sat in one of those chairs that are designed to be simultaneously inoffensive and profoundly uncomfortable, and I waited. I drank terrible coffee from a machine. I watched nurses move through the corridor. I thought about Hannah 17 years ago, and I thought about the version of Hannah who had at some point in the past year decided that my 17-year-old promise was worth holding on to. It was close to 3 in the morning when the surgeon came out. How was a compact man with very tired eyes and the particular calm of someone who has just done something extremely difficult. Are you Mr. Bennett? Yes. I'm Dr. Patel. I performed Hannah's surgery tonight. He sat down across from me, which told me something. Surgeons who are delivering the worst news tend to sit. Surgeons with straightforward updates often stand. The surgery was successful. We were able to treat the aneurysm. However, there is no word in the English language more frightening than however spoken by a surgeon. Hannah experienced some swelling in her brain during the procedure. This is not uncommon with the type of aneurysm she had. As a precaution, we've placed her in a medically induced sedation. We need the swelling to resolve before she can safely regain full consciousness. How long? I asked. We don't know. Days potentially. Possibly longer. We'll be monitoring her very closely. He looked at me with those tired, direct eyes. I have to be honest with you, Mr. Bennett. Her recovery from the surgery itself is encouraging, but the path ahead is not a short one. I want you to understand that. I understand, I said, and I meant it. Is there anything you need from us right now? I thought about tomorrow. About Lily. About a 10-year-old girl who didn't know me from any stranger on the street, whose mother was lying sedated in a hospital bed, whose elderly neighbor could only last 2 more days. Can I see her? I asked. Just for a minute. I just need to see her. Dr. Patel considered this. Then he nodded and stood up. They had put Hannah in a room off the surgical recovery ward. She looked very still and very small in the hospital bed, which is not how I remembered her at all. Hannah at 17 had taken up space in a room in a way that had nothing to do with her size. She had a presence, a gravitational force. This version of her was pale and quiet and connected to monitors. I stood at the foot of her bed, and I looked at her for a long time. I don't know if you can hear me, I said finally, keeping my voice very low. I suspect you can't, but I'm going to say this anyway because there are things I should have said 17 years ago and I ran out of time. I stopped, started again. I'm here. I don't know why you still had my number, but I think you kept it because you needed to know there was someone who meant it when they said they'd come. And I need you to know that I did mean it. I still mean it. I reached out and put my hand briefly over hers on the blanket. I'm going to take care of Lily, I said. I don't know what I'm doing. I'll probably mess it up in every way possible, but I'm not going anywhere. I left the hospital at 3:45 in the morning. The rain had led up to a steady drizzle. I sat in my truck for a while in the parking lot, not quite ready to drive. My phone had 12 missed calls, 2 from my project manager, 3 from contractors, 7 from numbers I didn't recognize. I had a fundraiser inspection deadline, a structural review, and a client who needed decisions made before Friday. I put the phone face down on the passenger seat. Tomorrow, I was going to meet a 10-year-old girl who had no idea I existed, and who needed more than anything in the world, one safe adult who was willing to show up. The next morning came fast, the way mornings do when you haven't slept. I drove to Hannah's apartment building at 8 o'clock. Mrs. Garfield met me at the door of her apartment on the second floor, a small white-haired woman who looked at me with the assessing eyes of someone who has been watching over other people's children for a long time. "You're the emergency contact," she said. It wasn't a question. "Noah Bennett, yes ma'am." She looked me up and down, with the frank appraisal of a woman who has earned the right to be direct. "Hannah mentioned you, not often, but she mentioned you." She held the door open wider. "Lily knows you're coming. I told her last night. She didn't sleep much." I stepped inside. Lily was sitting at the kitchen table with a bowl of cereal she hadn't touched. She was small for 10 or maybe just still, which made her seem small. She had Hannah's green eyes exactly like they'd been duplicated without modification. But where Hannah's eyes were warm and open, Lily's were watchful, measuring. She looked at me the way a child looks at something unfamiliar that might or might not be safe. She didn't say hello. She said, "How do you know my mother?" I sat down across from her uninvited, but also not told not to. "We went to high school together," I said. "We were close friends when we were young." She processed this. Then, "Why haven't I ever met you?" "Because I moved away after high school. We lost touch. It happens sometimes with people, even people who care about each other." She processed this too. And then she asked the third question, and it was the one that undid me completely. "Why did she trust you?" I opened my mouth and found nothing. Because the truth was, I didn't know. I genuinely did not know what Hannah had seen in me at 17, or at any point afterward, that made her look at an emergency contact field and type my name. I didn't know what I had done to deserve being remembered that way. "I don't know," I told Lily. "But I know she did. And I know that means something even if I can't explain it." Lily looked at me for a very long moment. She pushed her cereal bowl to the side. "I'm not going to thank you," she said clearly, "because my mom is in a hospital and I don't know if she's going to be okay, and I'm not going to pretend that anything about this situation is fine." "That is completely fair," I said, "and I'm not going to pretend I trust you just because you showed up." "Also fair. But Mrs. Garfield is old, and she doesn't know how to use my mom's coffee maker, and I have school today." "I can figure out this coffee maker," I said, "and I will get you to school." She looked at me once more. Then she picked up her backpack from the floor. "I like my coffee with 2 sugars and a lot of milk," she said. I blinked. "You drink coffee, you're 10. My mom lets me have half a cup in the morning. It's basically warm milk." I looked at Mrs. Garfield, who was smiling into her own mug in the manner of someone staying carefully out of it. "2 sugars," I said to Lily. "A lot of milk. Got it." That was how it started. Not with a dramatic breakthrough or a moment of emotional clarity. It started with a 10-year-old girl who was afraid and angry and absolutely determined not to show it, asking me to make her coffee correctly. That first day, I burned the pancakes I attempted because I misjudged Hannah's stove, which ran hot. Lily ate them without comment, which told me that she was either very polite or very hungry. I forgot that her school had a wear green day, and she had to go in her regular clothes, which resulted in a look from her teacher that made me feel approximately 4 feet tall. I packed her lunch incorrectly. I used the wrong bread, forgot that she was mildly allergic to tree nuts, and had put in a granola bar that contained almonds and included a note that said, "Have a good day," which Lily later informed me was not something her mother ever wrote. "Mom writes real things," Lily explained when I picked her up. "She writes things like, 'I saw 2 crows this morning, and one of them looked exactly like your science teacher.'" "I'll do better tomorrow," I said. She also writes the note on a post-it note, not on regular paper. Okay. Pink post-it notes. I'll buy pink post-it notes. She got into the passenger seat and looked straight ahead through the windshield. Mom knows which cereal I eat, she said. Tell me which one. Cheerios, plain, not Honey Nut. Mom says Honey Nut is just sugar pretending to be breakfast. That's a very accurate description of Honey Nut Cheerios, I said. Something very small happened at the corner of her mouth. Not quite a smile, but something adjacent to one. It was the most encouraging thing I had seen all day. That evening after Lily was in bed, and only after I had checked the closet which she had asked for in a very matter-of-fact way, that told me it was an established ritual, and left the hallway light on, I drove back to the hospital. Hannah's room was quiet. She looked the same as she had the night before, still pale, connected to her monitors. The machines made their steady sounds. The hallway outside was peaceful. I pulled a chair to the side of her bed and sat down. Okay, I said. Day 1. I told her about the pancakes. I told her about the Green Day disaster and the wrong bread and the almonds and the note I should have written on a pink post-it note. I told her what Lily had said when she got in the car and that I was going to buy plain Cheerios and a pack of pink post-it notes on the way home. I talked for about 20 minutes. I don't know if she could hear me. I suspect she couldn't. But the room felt different when I was talking into it. Less heavy, less silent. Before I left, I looked at her for a long moment. She's okay, I said. She's scared and she's trying very hard not to show it, but she is okay. And she is so much like you that it is honestly, Hannah, it is remarkable. I stood up. I'll be back tomorrow. I meant it. I would be back. And the day after. And the day after that. I had told her I would come 17 years ago. I was only now beginning to understand what coming actually meant. The pink post-it notes were the easy part. Noah found them at a drugstore on the way back from the hospital that first night, a 3-pack hot pink, exactly the kind Hannah apparently used. He also found plain Cheerios, the right bread, and a small notebook that he started carrying in his back pocket. Every time Lily said something important, every allergy, every preference, every small ritual that made up the architecture of her daily life, he wrote it down. Not because anyone told him to, because he understood, with the practical clarity of a man who builds things for a living, that a foundation has to be laid correctly, or everything built on top of it eventually fails. Day 2 was better than day 1. Not dramatically, but measurably. He got the cereal right. He found the pink post-it notes and wrote, "Saw a delivery truck this morning with a driver who looked exactly like your principal. I think it might be his secret identity." He left it on top of her lunch bag. Lily read it at the kitchen table, standing up still in her pajamas. She didn't smile, but she folded the note in half and put it in the front pocket of her backpack. That was enough for day 2. Day 3 was when things got more complicated. Noah was at the kitchen counter, trying to figure out how Hannah's coffee maker worked. It was one of those manual pour-over setups that required specific water temperature and a particular rhythm of pouring, which he eventually mastered only because he approached it like a construction problem, when Lily came out of her bedroom carrying a wooden box. It was old, clearly handmade, the kind of thing built by someone who was learning as they went. The joints were slightly uneven. The lid fit well enough. She set it on the kitchen table and opened it without preamble, without explanation, the way children sometimes do things, as if the action speaks clearly enough without words. Inside were photographs, letters, and at the bottom, wrapped carefully in a piece of cloth, a small model of a house. Noah turned from the counter with the coffee. He froze. He knew that model. He had built it himself 17 years ago in his parents' garage over a period of 3 weeks during their senior year. He had used scrap wood and wood glue and a lot of patience and a very limited set of tools. It was not a masterpiece of craftsmanship. The proportions were slightly off, the roofline wasn't perfectly level. But he had built it because Hannah had described something to him one afternoon in October, a place she wanted to exist someday, a place where children who had nothing could go and feel like they belonged somewhere. He had built her a model of the dream. He set the coffees down very carefully on the table. "Where did you get that?" he asked. "It was in my mom's room," Lily said. "In her closet. She keeps it on the shelf above her shoes." She looked at him steadily. "You built it." It wasn't a question. She already knew. "I did," Noah said. A long time ago. She told me about it. She didn't say who built it, but she said it was someone who believed in something she wanted before she knew how to want it out loud. He sat down across from her. He turned the model carefully in his hands. It was exactly as he remembered it, every imperfect joint, every slightly off angle. And on the bottom, in his teenage handwriting, faded, but still legible, "Someday we'll build a place where nobody feels unwanted." He stared at those words for a long time. "She kept it," he said, mostly to himself. "She keeps it on the shelf above her shoes," Lily said again. "She looks at it sometimes when she thinks I'm not watching." Noah set the model down carefully on the table between them. "Do you know what Lantern House is?" Lily asked. "I know what it was supposed to be," he said. "When she talked about it when we were young. A community center. A place where children could come and make things," Lily finished, "and read, and not feel like they're a problem." She looked at him directly. "It exists. She built it. It's been open for 6 years. I grew up there." Something moved through Noah's chest that he didn't have a clean name for. "Tell me about it," he said. And Lily did. For the next 20 minutes, the longest stretch she had spoken to him without stopping, she told him about Lantern House. About the painting classes, and the reading corner, and the after-school program, and the summer workshops, and the families who depended on it. She told it the way a child describes something that has been central to their world since before they could fully understand what it was. Not with the language of mission statements, but with the specific details that mean something. The particular smell of the paint corner. The teacher who let kids name their own artwork projects. The Thanksgiving dinner they hosted every year for families who had nowhere else to go. She told him about Grant Keller too, though she didn't use his name at first. She said, "There's a man who wants to sell the building." And then, with the flat precision of a child who has heard adult conversations she wasn't supposed to hear. "He's been trying to make my mom sign papers. She keeps saying no. She told me that some people look at a building full of children and only see the money underneath it." "What's his name?" Noah asked. "Grant Keller. He's been her business partner for 2 years. Or he says he's her partner. Mom says he's more like a liability with a briefcase." Despite everything, Noah almost smiled at that. She said it on the phone once when she thought I was asleep." Lily paused. "I'm rarely asleep when she thinks I am." "Good to know," Noah said, and made a note of that too, not in the notebook, but in the part of his mind that was still trying to construct a complete picture of what he had walked into. "She hasn't been able to make the loan payment," Lily continued. "Grant told the bank that she wouldn't be able to manage the center properly. He's been telling donors that it's going to close. Mom was planning a fundraiser. It was supposed to happen in 2 weeks. She looked at him. "I don't know what happens to it now." Noah looked at the wooden model on the table between them. "I thought about 17 years. He thought about what it took to turn a teenage dream described one October afternoon by a 16-year-old girl who was already carrying more than anyone her age should carry into an actual building with actual children in it. He thought about the kind of work that required. The hours, the fundraising, the fighting, the persistence. I thought about what it meant that someone was now trying to strip it away from her while she was lying unconscious in a hospital bed." His jaw tightened. "I want to see it," he said. Lily looked at him. "Lantern House." "Yes." She considered this for a moment. "After school," she said. "I can take you after school. I have a key." "After school," he agreed. He dropped her off at 7:55, wrote the post-it note. "Today's note, the coffee maker has been successfully defeated. Your mom's system requires a very specific pour. I respect it." And then drove directly to Hannah's hospital room before starting the rest of his day. She looked the same. Still and quiet and connected to everything. The machines made their sounds. Noah sat in the chair beside her bed. "Lily showed me the model this morning," he said. "The one I built senior year. You kept it on the shelf above your shoes." He was quiet for a moment. "I had no idea you still had it. I didn't know you'd built Lantern House. I didn't know about any of it, Hannah, because I was an idiot who confused leaving with letting go, and they are not the same thing." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I'm going to go see it this afternoon. I need to understand what we're dealing with, because I have a feeling that whatever Grant Keller is doing to that place, it needs to be stopped. And you are currently indisposed." He paused. "I'm sorry. That was probably a terrible joke. I'm better at building things than I am at bedside manner." The monitor beeped steadily. "Lily is okay," he added. "She's watching me very carefully the way you used to do. She has your eyes. You should know that. She has your exact eyes, and she uses them the exact same way you do, like she's reading something written in small print on the back of whatever you just said." He stood up. "I'll be back tonight," he said. "I'll tell you about Lantern House." He went to Lantern House that afternoon with Lily. What he saw made him understand immediately and completely why Hannah had refused to sell it. It was not a beautiful building in the conventional sense. It was an older structure in a neighborhood that had seen better decades, with worn flooring and walls that needed paint, and a roof that had been patched rather than replaced. But it was full of children's artwork on every surface, full of shelves of books, organized by color and by subject, and by what looked like a system that only made sense to whoever had designed it, full of evidence of a community that had made itself at home here, and depended on that home still existing tomorrow. Lily walked through it the way children walk through places they know completely, without looking down, without hesitating, touching the shelves and the door frames as she passed them. "This is the reading corner," she said. "Mom added the window seat last spring. She sanded it herself. She had splinters for a week." She kept moving. "This is the painting room. There's a kid named Marcus who comes every Tuesday and Thursday and has been working on the same painting for 4 months. Mom says great art takes its own time." She stopped in front of a wall near the back. "And this is her office." The office door was closed, but through the small window beside it, Noah could see the desk, the stacks of files, the community bulletin board covered in photographs and children's drawings. He could also see through the glass that the filing cabinet behind the desk was partially open. "Has anyone been in here since the accident?" he asked. Lily frowned. "Mrs. Chin, the part-time coordinator, she came in yesterday to make sure everything was locked up and the after-school program could still run." "Why?" "That cabinet," he said. "Was it open before?" Lily looked. Something shifted in her expression. "No," she said slowly. "Mom keeps everything locked. She's very particular about the financial records." Noah was quiet for a moment, processing this. "Do you have a key to that office?" "Mom's keys are in her bag. Her bag is at the apartment." "We need to check whether anything is missing. Can we get Mrs. Chen on the phone?" Lily already had her phone out. Mrs. Chen arrived within 20 minutes. She was a brisk, competent woman in her late 40s who had been running the daily operations of Lantern House for 3 years, and who looked at Noah with the careful assessment of someone who had heard about him secondhand, but was still forming her own opinion. "Nothing should have been touched," she said immediately when she saw the filing cabinet. She unlocked the office and went directly to the drawer. She was quiet for a moment, then she turned around. "The Q3 donor ledger is gone, and the insurance binder, and the copies of the loan agreements." "Grant?" Lily asked. Mrs. Chen pressed her lips together. "I can't confirm that. But Grant called me this morning and told me the fundraiser was canceled. He said it was out of respect for Hannah's condition." She paused. "Then he asked me for the landlord's contact information." Noah stared at her. "What did you tell him?" "I told him I didn't have it." She looked back at the open cabinet. "I do have it. I just didn't feel right about giving it to him." She looked at Noah directly. "Are you the emergency contact, the one the hospital called?" "Yes." "Hannah trusted you," she said. Not warmly, not coldly. Just as a fact, like stating a measurement. "So it appears," Noah said. She held his gaze for another moment. Then she seemed to reach a decision. "The fundraiser is in 12 days, or it was. Grant doesn't have the authority to cancel it. Hannah is still the director. He controls part of the building's debt, but he's not a signatory on the event agreements. If the event runs and raises enough to cover the loan payment, he can't force a sale." "How much is the payment?" she told him. It was a significant number. Not impossible, but not easy. "And Grant's play," Noah said, "is to let the payment lapse, let the bank default the loan and position himself to take control. Is that right? That's my read, Mrs. Chen said. He's been positioning for months. The accident just handed him a cleaner path. Noah looked around the office. He looked at the photographs on the bulletin board, dozens of children at various events holding up artwork, grinning at someone behind the camera. In several of them, partially visible at the edge of the frame, was Hannah, laughing, pointing at something, kneeling down to be at eye level with a child. He thought about the wooden model on Lily's kitchen table. Someday we'll build a place where nobody feels unwanted. I need to see the building's structural assessment, he said. Whatever Grant filed with the bank or showed to donors. Mrs. Chen looked at him. Why? Because I'm a contractor, and I want to know whether what he's been telling people is accurate. She retrieved what she had, a copy of an assessment document that Grant had circulated, apparently to argue that the building required such extensive repairs that the cost would outpace any realistic fundraising. Noah read through it standing at the desk. He read it twice. His expression, which had been carefully neutral, sharpened into something else entirely. This is wrong, he said. Wrong how? Mrs. Chen asked. Wrong as in whoever wrote this either doesn't know what they're looking at or is deliberately misrepresenting it. He set the paper down. I can walk through this building in 2 hours and tell you exactly what it actually needs. My professional read with documentation. And I will tell you right now, just from looking at this room, that the roof situation he's describing as catastrophic is not a catastrophic situation. Mrs. Chen stared at him. Lily looked at him from the doorway with those green Hannah eyes. You can actually do that? Mrs. Chen asked. It's what I do for a living, Noah said. I build and I repair. I know what real structural damage looks like. I know what an inflated assessment looks like too. He paused. But I need to know something first. If the fundraiser runs, if the payment gets made, if someone can prove that Grant's assessment is fraudulent, is there a board that can act on that? Is there oversight? There's a board of 5 community members, Mrs. Chen said. Grant has been working to get himself appointed permanent director, but that hasn't happened yet. Hannah's the director, and 3 of the 5 board members are absolutely loyal to what she built here. Then we have a path, Noah said. He was quiet for a moment, looking at the empty filing cabinet, the missing records, the walls covered in children's drawings. Then he said, and we have 12 days. He started that evening. I went home to Hannah's apartment, where Lily was doing homework at the kitchen table, and he sat down with his laptop and his phone, and he began making calls. Contractors he knew, suppliers who owed him favors, people in the building and renovation community who respected his work and might be willing to donate a weekend's labor. Lily did her homework 3 feet away from him, and for a long time neither of them spoke. Then she said without looking up, Grant called here today. Noah stopped typing. He called Hannah's apartment. He called her cell phone. Mrs. Garfield had it. She handed it to me because she didn't know what to do. Lily still didn't look up. He said he was very sorry about Mom's accident. He said he was worried about Lantern House being in good hands. He asked if there was any adult there he could speak with about the center's future. What did you tell him? I told him that the adults were handling it and that he should direct all future inquiries to Mrs. Chen. Noah stared at her. You're 10 years old, he said. My mom taught me to handle phone calls professionally, Lily said, and finally looked up. She said that calm is its own kind of power. If you sound rattled, people feel permission to push. Noah held her gaze for a moment. She taught you well, he said. I know, Lily said, and went back to her homework. He visited Hannah that night and told her all of it. The missing files. Grant's phone call, the structural assessment he was already certain was fabricated, the 12-day timeline. I'm going to inspect the building properly this week, he told her. And then I'm going to rebuild your fundraiser. I don't know exactly how yet, but I know how to build things, and I know how to get people to show up for something worth showing up for. He paused. You built something worth showing up for, Hannah. I need you to know that I've seen it now, and I understand what it is. The monitor beeped steadily. Also, he added, Lily handled a phone call from Grant today with more composure than I handle most client meetings. You have an extraordinary kid. He drove home in the rain. On day 5, Caleb showed up. Noah was in the parking lot of Lily's school at 3:15, waiting for dismissal, when a man knocked on the passenger window. He was roughly Noah's age, mid-30s, with Hannah's bone structure and a jaw that was currently set hard enough to function as a structural element. He was wearing a jacket that needed to be washed, and an expression that communicated with great efficiency that he did not regard Noah Bennett favorably. Noah rolled down the window. "You're the emergency contact," the man said. It came out like an accusation. "And you are Caleb Whitmore, Hannah's brother." Noah kept his voice level. "I've been trying to reach you. I've been driving from Bend since I heard." He looked at Noah with flat green eyes, the same green as Hannah's, the same green as Lily's. A Whitmore family trait apparently, and those eyes said everything his voice hadn't said yet. "Who gave you permission to be in my sister's life? Who decided you had any right to be in my niece's life?" "Hannah did," Noah said simply. Caleb's jaw tightened. "Hannah is in a coma. Hannah is sedated. It's different. And she listed me as her emergency contact, which she updated within the last year, deliberately. That doesn't give you authority over anything." "I'm not claiming authority. I'm claiming presence." Noah kept his eyes steady on the man. "Where have you been, Caleb?" Something moved across Caleb's face. Not anger exactly, something more complicated with shame underneath it. "That's none of your business," he said. "You're right, it's not." Noah looked toward the school entrance where kids were starting to file out. "But Lily is about to walk out of those doors, and she doesn't know you're here. So however you're planning to handle this next 60 seconds, I'd think carefully about it." Caleb turned and looked at the school entrance. Lily came through the doors in the middle of a group of kids. She was looking at her backpack strap, adjusting it, not looking up. Then something made her look up, instinct maybe, or the particular alertness of a child who has been on edge for 5 days, and she saw Caleb. She stopped completely. The other kids flowed around her. "Uncle Caleb," she said. Her voice was absolutely flat. "Hey Lil," he said. His voice cracked slightly on her name. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at Noah. "He's my uncle," she said, as if Noah might not have gathered this. "I know," Noah said. "He and my mom don't talk." "I know that too." Caleb crouched down to her level. "Lily, are you here because of Lantern House?" she asked. "Or are you here because of Mom?" The question hit Caleb like something physical. You could see it. "I'm here because of your mom," he said. "And because of you." Lily studied him the way she studied everything, with patient, measuring silence. "You can come to the apartment," she said finally. "But you should know that Noah is in charge right now. Mom put him in charge. So if you're going to argue about things, you should do it outside and not in front of me." She walked to Noah's truck and got in. Caleb stood up and looked at Noah over the roof of the truck. The hard expression had shifted into something much more human and much less comfortable. "She's a tough kid," he said. "She's Hannah's kid," Noah said. The three of them drove to Hannah's apartment, in a silence that had too many things in it to classify simply. At the apartment, Lily went directly to her room to do homework. Noah made coffee and set a cup in front of Caleb without asking, because it seemed like the kind of situation that required coffee, regardless of anyone's preferences. Caleb sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Lily had opened the wooden box 3 days ago, and he looked like a man who had been rehearsing a speech for a long drive and had now forgotten all of it. "I haven't spoken to Hannah in 6 years, he said. "I know." "She told you." Marisol, the social worker at the hospital, she found out when she was trying to identify family contacts. Noah sat across from him. "What happened between you two?" Caleb wrapped his hands around the coffee cup. "Our mom got sick 4 years ago, before she died. She needed round-the-clock care, and neither Hannah nor I had the money for it, and I thought the only realistic answer was to sell Lantern House. Hannah had equity in the building by then, enough to cover Mom's care and have something left over. She refused. Completely. She said those kids needed the center more than we needed the money. I said our mother needed care more than other people's kids needed a painting class." He looked at the table. "I said some things I can't take back. She said some things back, and then we stopped talking. Who was right? Noah asked. Caleb was quiet for a long time. I don't think right and wrong is how it worked, he said finally. I think we were both terrified and we turned it into a war instead of a conversation. He looked up. I found out about the accident through a mutual friend. Drove straight here. I didn't know what else to do. Noah looked at him. He thought about what Marisol had said, that Caleb had not spoken to Hannah in 6 years, that their relationship had ended in an argument about Lantern House. He thought about what it meant for a man to drive several hours to a hospital to see a sister he hadn't spoken to in 6 years. It meant something. Even if Caleb didn't quite know what yet. She's going to wake up, Noah said. We don't know when, but she will. And when she does, what happens between you and her, that's yours to figure out. I can't help you with that. But, Caleb said. He could clearly hear the conjunction that hadn't been spoken yet. But right now, Lantern House is about to be taken from her by a man named Grant Keller, who's been misrepresenting financial documents and has now apparently helped himself to some of the center's records. And I have 12 days to stop that from happening. Noah held Caleb's gaze. I don't know if you're here to help or here to create another problem. But if you're here to help, I can use someone who knows Hannah's legal situation better than I do. Caleb stared at him. You've been here 5 days, he said slowly. Yes. And you've already assessed the building and identified the fraud, and you have a 12-day plan. I have the beginning of one. Caleb looked at him for a long moment, and Noah saw underneath the exhaustion and the shame and the complicated weight of 6 years of silence, the same thing he'd seen briefly in Lily's expression. Someone trying to figure out whether this stranger in front of them was someone who could actually be trusted. I'm an accountant, Caleb said. I know how to read financial documents. That's useful, Noah said. I know what fraud looks like in a ledger. That's very useful. And I know Hannah's partnership agreements with Grant because I was there when she drafted them before we stopped talking. Noah felt something shift into place. Then I think, he said carefully, that you and I need to have a longer conversation. Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway at that exact moment. She looked at both of them, Noah with his coffee, Caleb with his complicated history. The two of them sitting at the kitchen table like something important was being decided. Are you arguing? She asked. No, Noah said. Are you going to work together? Noah looked at Caleb. Caleb looked at Noah. We're working on it, Noah said. Lily nodded slowly. Then she went back to her room. That night, Noah sat alone in Hannah's apartment after Caleb had gone to find a hotel. Lily was asleep. The hallway light was on, the closet had been checked. The apartment was quiet. He sat at the kitchen table with the wooden model in front of him. He turned it over in his hands. He looked at the words in his own teenage handwriting. Someday we'll build a place where nobody feels unwanted. He had written that at 17, not quite understanding what it would cost someone to actually build it. Not understanding the years and the exhaustion and the fundraising and the fighting and the refusal to let it be taken away, even when the cost of holding on was losing her own brother. He had written those words as a romantic gesture. Hannah had built them into a real thing that real children walked through every Tuesday and Thursday and every day after school. He set the model down carefully. He pulled out his notebook and turned to a new page. At the top he wrote 12 days. And underneath it, he began to write everything he knew, everything he'd learned, everything he had to work with. He wrote until after midnight. And then he drove to the hospital and sat in the chair beside Hannah's bed and told her about Caleb and about the conversation they'd had and about the fact that her brother had driven several hours through the night because somewhere underneath 6 years of silence, the word sister still meant something to him. He's not a bad man, Noah told her. He made a bad choice. There's a difference. He paused. I've made a few of those myself. The monitor beeped. The room was quiet. 12 days, Hannah, he said. I'm not going to let him take it. He stayed for an hour. Then he drove back through the rain to the apartment where Lily was sleeping with the hallway light on, and he sat down at the kitchen table, and he got back to work. Day 7. Noah had slept 4 hours the night before, and the night before that, and the night before that. He was running on coffee, the specific clarity that comes from having a defined problem to solve, and the kind of stubbornness that builds houses in bad weather. The structural inspection of Lantern House had taken him 2 full days. He had brought in a colleague, a man named Dennis Park, who had 22 years of building inspection experience and owed Noah a favor from a commercial project the previous year, and together they had gone through the building room, floor by floor, with the particular thoroughness of people who understand that precision matters when someone's future depends on the numbers being right. What they found was not what Grant Keller had reported. The roof needed work. Real work, not patch jobs, a partial replacement on the east section, and new flashing around 3 of the dormers. The front entrance had a drainage issue that had been causing slow moisture damage to the threshold. 2 of the electrical panels were outdated and needed to be brought up to code. These were genuine issues, and Noah had not minimized any of them in his documentation. But Grant's assessment had described a building on the verge of structural failure. It had cited foundation problems that didn't exist. It had listed window replacements across the entire building when only 4 windows actually needed attention. It had attached cost estimates that were by Noah's and Dennis's combined reckoning inflated by a factor of nearly 3. "This isn't a mistake," Dennis said, standing in the middle of the main room with the assessment in his hand. "Someone made deliberate choices about what to include and how to price it." "I know," Noah said. "You're going to need this documented properly if you're planning to challenge it." "I'm already documenting it." Dennis looked at him with the expression of a man who has seen a lot of situations over 22 years. "How deep are you in this, Noah?" Noah looked at the walls covered in children's artwork, crayon drawings, and watercolors and collages made from torn magazine pages, and thought about how to answer that honestly. "Deep enough," he said. Caleb, meanwhile, had been working through the financial records that Mrs. Chen had managed to protect the documents Grant hadn't gotten to. He sat up at Hannah's kitchen table every morning after Lily left for school, with a laptop and a yellow legal pad, and the particular focused silence of a man doing penance through useful work. On the morning of day 7, he looked up from his laptop and said, he moved money. Noah was on the phone with a supplier. He held up one finger and finished the call. Then he sat across from Caleb. "Show me." Caleb turned the laptop around. "These are the donor records I was able to reconstruct from Mrs. Chen's copies and from the publicly filed tax documents. 2 major donations from the fall quarter are recorded in the public filing but don't appear in the operational account. They went somewhere but not into the center's budget." "How much?" Caleb told him the number. Noah was quiet for a moment. "That's enough to cover the loan payment." "Yes," Caleb said. "It is." They looked at each other across the kitchen table. "He took money that was supposed to keep this place open," Noah said. "It came out very flat and very certain the way statements come out when you already knew the conclusion, and the evidence has simply confirmed it. I can't prove the destination yet, but the gap is documented, and I think—" Caleb paused. "I think if we can get this in front of the right board members before the fundraiser, we can trigger a formal review, which would prevent him from having any authority over the sale vote." "How long to get the documentation airtight?" 3 more days, maybe 2 if I push." "Push," Noah said. Caleb nodded and turned back to his laptop. It was also day 7 when Noah began assembling the volunteer crew for the renovation work. He had calls out to 11 contractors and tradespeople in the Portland area. 6 of them called back within 24 hours. 4 of those 6 said yes immediately, because Noah had built a reputation over 12 years of showing up when he said he would and doing work that held. In the contracting world, that reputation is its own currency. He organized 3 consecutive weekend workdays and 1 full weekday, and he mapped out a repair sequence that prioritized the most visible and functionally important issues: the entrance drainage, the electrical panels, the east roof section, and the window replacements. It was an ambitious timeline. It required everything to go right. Almost nothing went right on day 8. The first problem arrived at 7 in the morning, when Mrs. Chen called to say that the landlord had contacted her. Grant had apparently reached him directly, not through official channels, but through a personal relationship, and suggested that given Hannah's medical situation, It might be worth discussing early termination of the lease before the loan default triggered a more complicated legal process. Noah called the landlord himself within 10 minutes. It was not a comfortable conversation. The landlord, a man in his 60s named Gerald Foss, who had rented the building to Hannah at a below-market rate 6 years ago because he had liked her vision and her honesty, was now being presented with a much easier version of events by someone who had framed the situation to make selling seem inevitable. "Grant told me the building's basically unsalvageable," Gerald Foss said. "Said it would take more money than the center could ever raise to fix it properly." "Mr. Foss," Noah said, keeping his voice measured, "I am a licensed contractor with 12 years of experience, and I have just completed a 2-day professional inspection of that building with a certified inspector. The real repair cost is significantly less than what Grant showed you. I can have documented estimates in your hands within 48 hours. I'm asking you not to make any decisions until you've seen them." There was a long pause. "Why do you care about this building?" Gerald Foss asked. "Who are you to Hannah Whitmore?" "I'm the person she trusted when she ran out of options," Noah said. "And I'm the person trying to make sure that trust wasn't misplaced." Another pause. 48 hours, the landlord said. "But that's what I'm giving you. After that, I need to think about my own position here." "That's all I need," Noah said. He hung up and sat for 30 seconds with his eyes closed. Then he picked up the phone and called Dennis Park. "I need the full documented report," he said. "Not in a week. 48 hours. Dennis exhaled. "Noah, I know. I have 2 other jobs. I know. I'll make it worth your time." A pause. 48 hours, Dennis said. "But you owe me significant." "I know that too." The second problem arrived at 2 in the afternoon. Noah was at Lantern House with 2 of the volunteer contractors walking through the repair priorities when his phone rang. It was Marisol Vega. "Mr. Bennett," she said, and her tone was the professional calm that he had learned to listen underneath. "I need to inform you of a development regarding Lily's custody situation. Caleb Whitmore has filed a petition to be recognized as Lily's primary temporary guardian." Noah stopped walking. The 2 contractors kept moving ahead of him and didn't notice. "He filed the petition," Noah said, "this morning. His argument is that as blood family, he has a stronger legal claim to temporary guardianship than an unrelated individual, regardless of the emergency contact designation." "Does he?" "Legally, it's a valid argument to make. A judge would consider it." She paused. "I want to be clear, this doesn't mean an immediate change in Lily's situation. Any change would require a hearing and a determination of what's in Lily's best interest. But I'm required to inform you." Noah stood in the middle of Lantern House with the phone pressed to his ear and thought about Caleb sitting at Hannah's kitchen table that morning, working through financial records with the focused diligence of someone trying to earn his place back. He thought about the man who had knocked on his car window in the school parking lot with anger in his face and shame underneath it. "When is the hearing?" he asked. "We're looking at day 11 or 12, close to your fundraiser timeline." "I understand. Thank you for telling me." He hung up. He stood still for another moment. Then he walked to the window and looked out at the street, at the neighborhood, at the ordinary, Tuesday afternoon life of a Portland block, and he did something he had been avoiding doing since the night of the hospital call. He let himself feel for just a moment how tired he was. Not physically tired, though he was that too. The other kind of tired. The kind that comes from carrying weight that wasn't yours to carry and doing it anyway because it needed to be carried and there was nobody else. 17 years ago, he had left because leaving seemed like the right thing, the respectful thing, the thing that gave Hannah room to build her own life. And now, 11 days after a phone call, he almost didn't answer. He was standing inside the thing she had built, trying to save it, while also keeping her daughter out of foster care, while also managing a fraudulent business partner, while also watching her brother complicate everything with a legal petition. He pressed the heel of his hand against the window frame. "You okay?" One of the contractors, a woman named Petra, who had been doing plumbing work in Portland for 15 years, had come back to find him. "Yeah," he said. She looked at him with the practical empathy of someone who has spent a career in other people's buildings, seeing the private moments that happen in construction zones when people think nobody's watching. You don't look okay. I will be. She put her hands on her hips. This place means something to you. It meant something to someone I care about, he said. And I'm starting to understand why. She looked at the walls. At the children's artwork, the reading corner, the carefully organized bookshelves. My daughter went to a place like this when she was 7, she said. We were in a bad stretch. Her dad and I had separated. I was working 2 jobs and she needed somewhere safe to go after school. I don't know what I would have done without it. She went back to work. Noah stood at the window for another 30 seconds. Then he called Caleb. The phone rang 4 times. Then, yeah. You filed a petition for custody of Lily, Noah said. He kept his voice completely even. The silence on the other end of the phone lasted long enough to be its own kind of answer. I have a right to, Caleb said finally. She's my niece. She is, Noah agreed. And you spent the last 6 years not speaking to her mother, and the last 7 days sitting at her mother's kitchen table, working through financial records because you needed somewhere to put your guilt. Which I respect, Caleb. I genuinely do. I genuinely do. But this morning you filed legal papers against the arrangement that Hannah chose, while Hannah is still in the hospital. Another silence. You could leave, Caleb said, and his voice had something defensive and raw in it. You could walk out of this any time. I'm her blood family. That means something. I'm not arguing that it doesn't mean something, Noah said. But being related to Lily gives you history. It doesn't automatically give you her trust. And right now this week, Lily is in a stable routine. She is going to school. She is eating. She is sleeping with the hallway light on, and she is carrying the pink post-it notes her mother writes for her in her front pocket. And I write them now because it's what she needs, and she told me so. You coming in and disrupting that arrangement right now legally while her mother is sedated. He stopped, started again. That's not about Lily, that's about you. The silence this time was different. You don't know what it's been like, Caleb said, and his voice had cracked open slightly. Not being able to call her, not knowing if she was okay. Getting the call that she was in surgery, and realizing that 6 years had just gone. That I had let 6 years go over an argument about a building. I know a little about that, Noah said quietly. I let 17 years go. Something shifted on the other end of the line. What do you want me to do? Caleb asked. I want you to call Marisol and withdraw the petition, not because your claim doesn't matter, it does, but because right now the most important thing we can do for Lily is keep her life steady, and the most important thing we can do for Hannah is keep Lantern House standing. We have 5 days. We need to be working together, not creating legal complications. A long pause. And after? Caleb asked. After Hannah wakes up and things stabilize. That conversation belongs to you and Hannah, not to me. Noah meant it. But you have to be there to have it. Which means you have to still be here. He could hear Caleb breathing on the other end. Fine, Caleb said. I'll call Marisol. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm not doing it for you. I know, Noah said. You're doing it for Lily, which is exactly the right reason. Day 9 brought the news from the hospital that no one was prepared for. Noah was at Lantern House at 7 in the morning, working alongside the volunteer crew. They were moving faster than he had expected. Petra's team had resolved the drainage issue in a day, and the electrical work was ahead of schedule. The east roof section was the largest remaining task, but the crew Noah had assembled for it was experienced, and the weather was cooperating. His phone rang at 7:40. It was Dr. Patel. Mr. Bennett, I need you to come to the hospital. Noah's whole body went cold. What happened? Hannah has developed a secondary infection. It's a complication. We see sometimes with extended sedation. It's not uncommon, but in her case, it's affecting her more significantly than we'd like. We've started aggressive antibiotic treatment, but I need to be honest with you. A pause. Bringing her out of sedation may need to be delayed further, possibly significantly further. How much further? I can't give you a reliable timeline right now. Days certainly, possibly weeks. Her body needs to address this infection before we can safely reduce the sedation. Noah stood in the middle of Lantern House with the sounds of the volunteer crew working around him. "Is she going to be okay?" he asked, and it came out quietly the way the real questions always come out. "We're doing everything possible. She's responding to the antibiotics, but I want you to be prepared for a longer road than we initially hoped." He drove to the hospital immediately and sat in Hannah's room for 40 minutes, saying nothing at first, just sitting. The monitors made their sounds. Her face was still and pale. Then he said, "You picked a very inconvenient time to have complications. I want you to know that." He looked at her hands on the blanket. "Lily is okay. Caleb is here and he's being useful, which I think would surprise you. The building is coming together. Dennis's report goes to the landlord today. Caleb found the gap in the donor accounts he found where Grant moved the money. We have documentation." He paused. "We're going to make it. 5 days. We're going to make it." He was quiet for a moment. "But I need you to fight this infection, Hannah. Whatever you're doing in there, keep doing it. Lily needs her mother. She is managing, she is brave, she is extraordinary, but she is 10 years old, and she needs her mother." He put his hand over hers on the blanket, the same way he had on the very first night. "Keep fighting," he said. He went back to Lantern House and got back to work. It was that evening day, 7:43 p.m., that Lily disappeared. Noah got the call from the school at 7:45, which meant she had been gone almost no time at all. Lily had attended the full day, after-school program. She had left with a group of children at 5:30, and the coordinator had assumed she was going home. But when Noah had been at the hospital and then at Lantern House, nobody had confirmed she had actually arrived. He had the call from the school, and he was already in his truck. He drove without fully processing what he was doing. He drove on instinct and the experience of having spent 9 days learning how Lily's mind worked, what she feared, what she ran toward, when the fear got too big to carry sitting still. He went to Lantern House. He didn't even hesitate. He drove directly there. The front entrance was unlocked. He had a key, and so did Lily, because Lily had grown up here and knew where everything was. He pushed through the door and walked through the main room and through the painting room and toward the back, toward the unfinished reading room that still had bare floors and half-painted walls, because that section was last in the repair sequence. Lily was under a table in the corner of the reading room. She was curled with her back against the wall and her knees against her chest, and she was holding the wooden model, the one Noah had built at 17, the one she had taken from the kitchen table without either of them noticing. She looked up at him when he came in. Her eyes were dry, which was somehow worse than tears would have been. He didn't say anything dramatic. He didn't rush to her. He walked over to the table, lowered himself to the floor, and sat beside her with his back against the wall. Like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like sitting on the floor of an unfinished room beside a frightened 10-year-old was exactly where he had intended to be at 7:50 p.m. on a Thursday. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Lily said, "I heard you on the phone with Dr. Patel this morning." He had wondered. He had stepped outside to take that call, but the window had been open. "How much did you hear?" he asked. "Enough," she said. "Complications. Weeks. Delayed." Her voice was very controlled. "I know what complications means when it comes with those other words. Your mom is getting antibiotics. She's responding to them. Dr. Patel said she's fighting. He also said it could be weeks," Lily said. "I know what weeks means. Weeks means I go back to school on Monday and she's still not awake. Weeks means Thanksgiving. Weeks means Christmas might be weeks." He didn't argue with her. She was right, and she deserved to not be lied to. "Yes," he said. "It might mean all of those things." She looked down at the wooden model in her hands. She turned it over, the way Noah had turned it over 9 days ago at the kitchen table. She looked at the words on the bottom. "Someday we'll build a place where nobody feels unwanted." "She talked about you," Lily said. He turned to look at her. "Not often. And she never said your name. But she talked about you." Lily kept her eyes on the model. "She said there was someone who believed in her before she knew how to believe in herself. She said that person promised her something once, and that even though she never held him to it, she always felt safer knowing the promise existed." Noah was quiet. She said that sometimes people show you who they are in small moments, Lily continued, and that one of the most important small moments of her life was when someone built her a model of a house she'd only described out loud once, because it meant he had actually listened. She paused. She kept it on the shelf above her shoes because she wanted to be able to see it from her bed. She said it reminded her that believing in people's futures is one of the most important things you can do for them. Noah found that he could not speak for a moment. "I knew your name," Lily said quietly, "before the hospital called. She never said your name, but I knew it from the emergency contact form. I saw it once when I was looking for something in her desk. Noah Bennett. And I thought whoever that is, she trusts him." She looked up at him finally. "She wrote you a letter." The air shifted. "What?" Noah said. "A few months ago. She got some medical test results that scared her. I don't know exactly what they said, she didn't tell me. But I saw her writing something long by hand late at night. And when I asked her about it, she said she was writing a letter to someone she should have written to a long time ago." Lily reached into her jacket pocket. "I found it in her desk after the accident. She never mailed it." She held out a folded piece of paper. Noah's hand was not entirely steady when he took it. He unfolded it carefully. Hannah's hand, the same handwriting he had known at 17. A little different now, a little more worn, and filled most of the page. He read it slowly in the quiet of the unfinished reading room with Lily sitting beside him. The letter said, "You once promised you would come. I know I have no right to ask whether that promise still exists. I know that 17 years is not a pause, it's a choice we both made. Even if we made it out of love and fear and the particular stubbornness of people who don't know how to say what they need. But Lily is 10 years old, and I had some tests done last month, and I found myself sitting in a parking lot afterward, thinking about what happens to her if something goes wrong. I have a list of people who love her. It's not a short list. But when I asked myself who I trust to understand that love is not possession, that loving a child means staying when leaving would be easier, I could only think of one person. I know I have no right to ask this. I know I disappeared too. But if Lily ever has no one, I need the person beside her to be someone who stayed." The letter was not finished. It ended mid-thought, mid-sentence, as if she had put it down intending to come back to it. She never came back to it. Noah sat with the letter in his hands for a long time. Lily was watching him. "She never sent it," Noah said finally. His voice was very low. "No," Lily said. "But she kept my name on the form." "Yes." He folded the letter very carefully along its original creases. "She was ashamed," Lily said. "I think she was ashamed to only reach out when she needed something. I think she thought you'd see it that way." She paused. "Would you have?" Noah thought about it honestly. "No," he said. "I would have come the moment she asked." "I know," Lily said. "I think she knew too. I think that's why she kept your name there, even when she couldn't make herself send the letter. She knew you would come." Noah looked at her, this 10-year-old girl with Hannah's green eyes, sitting on the floor of an unfinished reading room in the building her mother had built out of a teenage dream, and he thought about what it meant to be trusted the way Hannah had trusted him. Not because he had earned it through some grand gesture, but because at 17, he had listened to a girl describe something she wanted, and he had built her a small, imperfect model of it, and she had carried that gesture for 17 years as evidence that he was the kind of person who showed up for the things that mattered. "Your mom is going to wake up," he said. Lily looked at him. "I don't know when, but she is going to wake up. And when she does, Lantern House is going to be standing. The roof is going to be fixed. The entrance is going to be repaired. And Grant Keller is going to be explaining himself to a board and possibly to investigators." He held her gaze. "I'm not leaving, Lily. I want to be clear about that. Whatever timeline this takes, I'm not leaving." Lily looked at him for a long time with those measuring green eyes. Then she leaned her head against his arm. Not dramatically. Just leaned. Like it was a small and ordinary thing, which is exactly what it was and exactly why it was enormous. They sat like that on the floor of the unfinished reading room for several minutes. Noah didn't move. Outside Portland went about its evening. Inside, a man who had spent 17 years being careful about what he allowed himself to feel sat on the floor of a building that meant something with a child who had finally decided he could be trusted and held a letter that had never been mailed. He understood now why he was the emergency contact, not because of the promise he had made, but because Hannah had watched people leave her when her life got complicated. Her father in death, her brother in anger, Lily's father in the ordinary gradual way that some people leave, and she had held on to the memory of the one person who had built her something small and imperfect and meant it. She hadn't sent the letter because she was afraid of what asking would mean, but she had kept his name on the form because she needed to know somewhere underneath everything that if the worst happened, there was someone who would come. Day 10 came fast. At 8 a.m., Caleb sent Noah a message. "I have everything, full documentation, ready to present." At 9 a.m., Noah received Dennis Park's completed structural report. At 10 a.m., he called an emergency board meeting for that evening. At 2 p.m., Grant Keller showed up at Lantern House. He came with 2 men. Noah didn't recognize the kind of men who carry briefcases and look at buildings the way developers look at land, evaluating what could be demolished and what could be built instead. Grant himself was in his mid-40s, with the composed self-assurance of a man accustomed to getting what he wanted through the patient application of money and pressure. He looked at Noah like a problem he hadn't fully accounted for. "Mr. Bennett," he said, "I've heard a great deal about you over the past week." "I'm sure you have," Noah said. "You've put considerable effort into a situation that isn't really your concern." "Hannah made it my concern," Noah said. Grant smiled, and there was nothing warm in it. "Hannah is incapacitated. The center needs leadership. The board needs direction. I'm simply trying to protect the asset." "You're trying to acquire it," Noah said flatly. "There's a difference. I'm trying to ensure that when the loan payment lapses, and it will lapse, Mr. Bennett, because there isn't enough community goodwill in Portland to raise that kind of money in 4 days, the building transitions to someone who can manage it properly." 4 days, Noah said. "You're counting." "Of course I am. Business requires precision." Noah looked at him steadily. "The board is meeting tonight," he said. "There are some financial documents they're going to want to review. Caleb Whitmore has been very thorough." Something moved behind Grant's composed eyes, very briefly, but Noah saw it. "Caleb Whitmore has been estranged from this organization for years," Grant said. "He has a talent for numbers regardless," Noah said, "and the documents are quite clear about where a certain amount of donor money went that was supposed to go into the operational account." The composed expression did not change, but the 2 men with briefcases exchanged a look. "You're overreaching," Grant said, "and when Hannah recovers, she'll understand that what I was doing was protecting her." "She'll have the opportunity to tell me herself," Noah said, "when she wakes up." "If," Grant said. The word landed like a stone dropped into water. Noah felt the impact of it move through him. He kept his face absolutely still. "I think we're done here," he said. "This is Hannah Whitmore's building. You should leave." Grant looked at him for a long moment. Then he turned and walked out, and his 2 companions followed. Noah stood in the middle of Lantern House. He thought about the word Grant had used. If. He thought about Hannah in that hospital bed fighting an infection, sedated, unaware of all of it. Then he picked up his phone and called Caleb. "Tonight's meeting," he said. "Bring everything." "Already packed," Caleb said. Noah hung up. He walked to the wall where the children's artwork was displayed, the drawings and paintings and collages, and he stood there and looked at them. Then he went back to work. 3 days left. The board meeting that evening ran for 2 hours and 40 minutes, and it was not a comfortable 2 hours and 40 minutes for anyone in the room. Noah had arranged it at Mrs. Chen's house because Lantern House itself felt too contested a territory. Too much of Grant's energy had moved through it in the past week, and Noah wanted neutral ground. 7 people sat around Mrs. Chen's dining room table: Noah, Caleb, Mrs. Chen, and 4 of the 5 board members. The 5th board member, a man named Richard Holt, who had been appointed at Grant's recommendation 18 months ago, sent a text message saying he had a prior commitment and could not attend. Nobody in the room believed the prior commitment. Caleb presented the financial documentation first. He had organized it the way a good accountant organizes evidence, not dramatically, not with accusations up front, but methodically. He laid out what the donor records showed, what the operational accounts showed, and where the gap between those two things existed. He walked through the numbers quietly and precisely, and as he did, the faces around the table went through a progression that Noah watched carefully. Initial skepticism, followed by focused attention, followed by the particular expression people get when they understand that something they suspected but didn't want to believe has just been confirmed. The board member, who had been there the longest, a woman named Patricia Osei, who had helped Hannah write the original mission statement 6 years ago, put her hand flat on the table when Caleb finished. "He moved donor funds," she said, not as a question. "The documentation shows a gap of that amount between what was publicly reported and what entered the operational account," Caleb said carefully. "The destination of those funds requires further investigation, but the gap is clearly documented and it corresponds exactly to the overdue loan payment." "He moved the money that would have covered the payment," Patricia said. "And then he told the board the payment couldn't be made." The room was very quiet. "Yes," Caleb said. Then Noah presented Dennis Park's structural report. He walked through it without editorializing, just the numbers, the findings, the cost estimates, compared directly to what Grant had circulated. The difference between the two assessments was stark enough that it didn't need commentary. Another board member, a man named James Tran, who ran a small restaurant 2 blocks from Lantern House and had been sending weekly food donations to the center's family programs for 4 years, looked at the two documents side by side and said, "This isn't a difference of opinion, this is fabrication." "Yes," Noah said. "What do we do?" Patricia asked. "Tonight," Noah said, "you vote to suspend Grant's authority pending a formal investigation. You have the votes without Richard Holt. Tomorrow, Caleb takes the financial documentation to an attorney who handles nonprofit fraud cases. He's already made contact. And we run the fundraiser on Saturday." "Can we still raise enough in 3 days?" James asked. "We're not raising it from scratch," Noah said. "Caleb's documentation shows the money exists. It was raised. It came in. It was moved. The legal process to recover it will take time we don't have. So we need to cover the payment from the event and from whatever we can generate in the next 72 hours. I've been talking to people, contractors, business owners, former families from the center. The community knows something is happening." He paused. "People show up for things worth showing up for. Hannah built something worth showing up for." Patricia looked at him across the table with the steady eyes of a woman who has been fighting for things she believed in for a long time and knows what genuine commitment looks like versus what performance looks like. "You've been here 11 days, she said. "Yes." "You knew Hannah in high school?" "Yes." "And you walked into this and took all of this on?" "Someone had to." She held his gaze for a moment longer. Then she said, "All in favor of suspending Grant Keller's board authority pending investigation." 4 hands went up. The motion carried. It was 10:47 p.m. when Noah finally got back to Hannah's apartment. Lily was asleep. Mrs. Garfield had come over to sit with her because Noah had told her he might be late. He found Mrs. Garfield in the kitchen with a cup of tea and a crossword puzzle, and she looked up at him when he came in with the assessment of a woman who has been reading people's faces for 7 decades. "How did it go?" she asked. "We have 3 days," he said. "That's not what I asked." He sat down at the kitchen table. "It went the way it needed to go," he said. "Grant is suspended. The documentation is solid. The fundraiser is on." "And how are you?" He was quiet for a moment. "I'm tired," he said honestly. "And I'm worried about Hannah. And I'm trying very hard not to think too much about what happens if this doesn't work, because I can't afford to think about that right now." Mrs. Garfield put down her crossword puzzle and looked at him with the direct kindness of someone who no longer has patience for anything other than the truth. "You know," she said, "Hannah used to sit at this table and talk to me sometimes. Not often. She was a private person, your Hannah. But sometimes late at night when Lily was asleep, she'd knock on my door and we'd have tea." "What did she talk about?" Noah asked. Lantern House mostly. Her worries about the funding. Her worries about what would happen to the children if it closed. She paused. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes she talked about the things she regretted. The people she had let drift away because she was too busy, or too proud, or too afraid. She looked at him steadily. She never used your name, but she described you. The boy who listened, she said. The boy who built her something. Noah stared at the kitchen table. She said she'd made a choice a long time ago that she thought was generous and that she later realized was fear. Mrs. Garfield continued. She said she let someone go because she thought it was the right thing for him, and that by the time she understood, it had been the wrong thing for both of them. Too much time had passed to say so. It hadn't, Noah said quietly. Too much time. It hadn't. No, Mrs. Garfield agreed. I don't think it had. She finished her tea and gathered her crossword puzzle and her cardigan, and at the door she turned back and said, She chose the right person, you know, when she put your name on that form. She opened the door. Don't let her down. She left. Noah sat at the kitchen table alone for a long time. Then he checked the hallway light, checked Lily's closet, and went to bed. Day 11 arrived with a problem he hadn't anticipated. At 6:40 a.m., his phone rang. It was one of the roofing contractors, a man named Bill, who was supposed to have his crew at Lantern House at 7 to complete the east section replacement. Noah, Bill said, I've got a problem. 2 of my guys called in sick this morning, and a third one had a family emergency. I've got 1 person. I can't do the east section with 1 person. Noah sat up immediately. How many do you need? 3 minimum, 4 to do it properly. Noah was already doing math in his head. He knew the roof had to be finished before Saturday. The fundraiser was an open house parents, former students, community members, the landlord, Gerald Foss Local Press, that Mrs. Chen had managed to contact. Having scaffolding and incomplete roofing on the building during an open house designed to prove the building was viable was not a presentation of a building that was viable. I'll be there at 7, Noah said. I'll bring 2 people. You're going to work the roof yourself. It's not my first roof, Noah said, which was true. He had done roofing work every year of his contracting career when jobs required it. He called Caleb. The phone rang twice. It's 6:45 in the morning, Caleb said groggy. I need you on a roof at 7. A pause. I'm an accountant. I know. Can you carry materials and follow instructions? Another pause. Are you serious? Bill's crew is short. The roof has to be done before Saturday. Are you in or not? The longest pause yet. I'll be there, Caleb said. But if I fall off a roof, Hannah will never forgive either of us. Don't fall off the roof, Noah said. He was at Lantern House at 6:58. Bill was already there looking stressed. Caleb arrived at 7:12 in work clothes that were clearly not his usual attire, looking like a man who had made a decision he was only partially sure about. They worked the roof for 7 straight hours. Caleb was not a natural. He was slow at first, cautious, in the way people are cautious when they are genuinely uncertain of their footing. But he was methodical, and he paid attention, and he did not complain, and by the 3rd hour he had found a rhythm and was moving with something approaching competence. Noah worked alongside Bill and kept an eye on Caleb and directed the work with the focused efficiency of a man who has organized construction sites for 12 years. By 2 in the afternoon, the east section was done. Caleb sat on the edge of the scaffolding with his forearms on his knees and looked at the work they had done with the expression of someone who has accomplished something physical for the first time in a long time and is surprised by how much it matters. My hands are destroyed, he said. You'll be fine, Noah said. I have a presentation to a client on Monday. Wear gloves. Caleb looked out over the neighborhood from the height of the scaffolding. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, She really built something, didn't she? Yes, Noah said. I told her it was just a building. When we argued about selling it, I said it was just a building. He shook his head slowly. It's not just a building. No, Noah said. It's not. They were quiet for a moment, sitting above the neighborhood in the cold November air, looking at the streets below. When she wakes up, Caleb said, I don't know what to say to her. Start with sorry, Noah said, and then stop talking and listen. She'll tell you what she needs to hear. Caleb nodded slowly. They climbed down. That evening, day 11, 5:37 p.m. Noah was at the hospital when Dr. Patel stopped him in the corridor outside Hannah's room. Mr. Bennett, I was hoping to catch you. Something in the doctor's tone made Noah stop completely. There's been a development, Dr. Patel said. Hannah's infection markers have dropped significantly in the last 24 hours. Her body is responding to the antibiotics better than we expected. Noah stared at him. We're considering reducing her sedation tomorrow morning, Dr. Patel said. Cautiously. It's not a guarantee of anything. She may need time to regain full consciousness, and we won't know the extent of any cognitive effects until she's been awake and assessed. But the infection is moving in the right direction. She might wake up tomorrow, Noah said. She might begin to wake up tomorrow. The process can take time, but yes, we're cautiously optimistic. Noah put his hand on the wall beside him. Not because he needed it for balance exactly, more because he needed to touch something solid. Thank you, he said. Dr. Patel nodded and moved down the corridor. Noah went into Hannah's room and sat in the chair beside her bed. He sat forward with his elbows on his knees and his hands folded, and he looked at her. Okay, he said. So apparently you've decided to cooperate. Good. Because tomorrow is day 12 and I have a significant amount of work to do, and I would prefer to do it knowing you are on your way back. He paused. Also, Lily needs to know. She's going to need to know tonight so she doesn't find out alone. He took out his phone and called Caleb first, because Caleb was at the apartment with Lily, and he needed to be prepared before Noah told Lily directly. The doctor says she might start waking up tomorrow, Noah said when Caleb picked up. A long silence. Caleb, Noah said. Yeah, Caleb said. His voice was rough. Yeah, I'm here. That's yeah. I need you to be steady when I tell Lily, Noah said. She's going to need to understand that it's progress but not a guarantee. Can you do that? Yes, Caleb said. I can do that. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He told Lily at the kitchen table with Caleb sitting across from her. He told her the way he had learned to tell her things over the past 11 days directly, without softening it into something misleading, but with the specific care that the situation required. The infection is getting better, he said. The doctor might start reducing her sedation tomorrow. That means she might begin waking up. It's not a guarantee, and it might not happen all at once, but it's real progress. Lily sat very still. Might, she said. Might, he confirmed. We don't make promises about things we can't control, but the direction is right. She looked at the kitchen table. Her hands were in her lap. Then she said, The fundraiser is Saturday. Yes. She might be awake for the fundraiser. She might. Lily looked up at him, and for the first time in 11 days, for the first time since he had walked into Mrs. Garfield's apartment and found a 10-year-old with Hannah's green eyes who asked him 3 questions. He couldn't fully answer. Lily's face broke. Not dramatically, not the way children cry in movies. Quietly, the way people cry when the pressure has been building for a very long time, and the first piece of genuinely good news creates a crack in the wall holding everything back. Caleb reached across the table and put his hand over hers. She didn't pull away. Noah sat with them and let the moment be what it was. He didn't say, everything will be okay. He didn't reach for words that would paper over the uncertainty. He just stayed, which was the thing she had needed from the beginning, and the thing he had slowly learned to do. After a while, Lily wiped her face with her sleeve. I need to sleep, she said. Tomorrow is a school day. I know, Noah said. She stood up, and then she did something unexpected. She came around the table, and she hugged him brief, firm. The hug of a child who has decided something and is expressing it with action because words would require more vulnerability than she currently had available. Then she stepped back and went to her room. Noah and Caleb sat at the kitchen table in the quiet. She hasn't cried once, Caleb said. Not once in 11 days. She's been holding it for you, Noah said. For her mother. So someone else could fall apart if they needed to. Caleb looked at the doorway where Lily had gone. "She's 11 years old," he said. It came out with a weight that contained 6 years of missing things. 10, Noah said. "She's 10. "Right," Caleb said. 10. Day 12 began at 5:30 a.m. Noah did not sleep much. He lay in the dark and went through the day in his mind, the remaining setup work at Lantern House, the coordinator who was handling the tables and chairs, Mrs. Chen's press contacts, the food donations from 3 neighborhood restaurants, including James Tran's place, the documentation that Caleb had already forwarded to the attorney, the board members who would be present, the community families who had confirmed they were coming. He ran through the list of everything that could go wrong. It was a long list. He got up at 5:30 and drove to Lantern House and worked until 8. Then he drove Lily to school. Then he drove to the hospital. Hannah's room was different. He knew it before he fully registered why. Something in the quality of the stillness was different. The monitors showed the same numbers, but there was, he couldn't have explained it technically, a different quality to her presence in the room. He sat in the chair. "Today is the fundraiser," he said. "Everything is ready. The roof is done." Caleb helped, which I think you would find both surprising and appropriate. "The structural report is in Gerald Foss's hands, and he's confirmed he'll be at the event." The board suspended Grant 3 days ago. Caleb's attorney contact is building the fraud case from the financial documentation. He paused. "All you have to do is wake up." He looked at her. "I've been talking to you every night for 12 nights, he said. "I don't know how much of it you've heard, but I want to say one more thing before today happens, because I might not have a chance to say it later, and I have been very careful for a very long time about saying things that need to be said." He leaned forward. "I didn't come back because of a promise I made at 17. I came because you called me not with words, because you were unconscious, but with your name on a form and your faith in something I wasn't sure I deserved. And what I found when I got here, Lily and Lantern House, and the way this whole neighborhood leans on what you built. Hannah, it changed something in me. It changed what I understand about what I want my life to look like." He stopped. "I'm not saying this to put any pressure on you while you're lying in a hospital bed. I'm saying it because you wrote in that letter that you were afraid to reach out because you didn't want me to think you only came back when you needed something. I want you to know that you came back, and what you needed was exactly what I needed too, even if neither of us knew it." The monitor beeped steadily. He stood up and put his hand over hers. "Come back," he said. "When you're ready, we'll be there." He went to Lantern House. Grant arrived at 11:47 a.m. Noah was inside coordinating the setup when Mrs. Chen appeared at his elbow and said very quietly, "He's here." Here. Noah went to the entrance. Grant had brought more people this time. The 2 briefcase men from the previous visit, and also a man in a suit who introduced himself as Grant's attorney. Grant himself looked composed, which Noah had come to understand was his default performance regardless of what was actually happening underneath it. "Mr. Bennett," Grant said pleasantly, "I see you've gone ahead with this." "The board authorized the event," Noah said. "You've been suspended. You don't have standing here." "I have standing as a debt holder in this property," Grant said, "which means I have a legal right to be present for any public event held on the premises." He looked past Noah at the setup inside the tables, the art displays, the chairs arranged for the afternoon program. "This is very ambitious for 12 days of work." "It tends to go faster when people care about the outcome," Noah said. Grant's pleasant expression didn't flicker. "I want you to understand something," he said, lowering his voice slightly. "Even if this event raises the payment amount, and I doubt it will, the fraud allegation is nothing. There's no paper trail that directly implicates me. Caleb Whitmore has a documented history of estrangement from this organization. His word against mine." "It's not his word," Noah said. "It's documented financial records filed with the state, and an attorney who handles non-profit fraud cases has already reviewed them." The pleasantness shifted very slightly. "You're overreaching," Grant said. "You said that before," Noah said. "I'm still here." He went back inside. By 1 p.m., the room was filling. Families who had been through the center's programs over 6 years. Neighbors who had watched the building with a mixture of concern and loyalty. Former students, Some of them teenagers now, who had learned to paint in this room when they were 7 years old. Local business owners. Gerald Foss, the landlord who arrived at 1:15 and shook Noah's hand and looked at Dennis Park's structural report one more time and said, "The building looks better than I expected." "It has good bones," Noah said. "It just needed attention." Patricia Osei arrived with 2 other board members. James Tran arrived with his restaurant staff carrying food. Marisol Vega arrived and stood near the entrance with the professional calm that Noah had learned to find genuinely comforting. Caleb arrived with Lily at 1:30 directly from school pickup. Lily walked in and looked around at the filled room, at the people, the food, the repaired walls, the completed entrance, the art that had been carefully rehung after the construction work, and her face went through something that she clearly was not entirely prepared for. "It looks the same," she said quietly. To no one in particular. "A little better," Noah said from beside her. She looked at him. "You fixed the window seat in the reading room, the one Mom sanded herself." "It needed new screws," he said, "and the finish was lifting in one corner." She looked at it for another moment. Then she said, "Thank you." 2 words, simple, direct, Lily. "You're welcome," Noah said. At 2 p.m. Noah stood at the front of the room and spoke briefly. He did not have a prepared speech. He spoke about Hannah the way you speak about someone when you have spent 12 days learning who they are, through the evidence they left behind, through a daughter, through a building, through a community that showed up because she had shown up for them. He said, "Hannah Whitmore built this place for children who needed somewhere to be that didn't ask anything of them except their presence. She built it when she didn't have enough money and not enough support, and one person actively trying to take it from her. She built it the way people build things that matter, stubbornly, imperfectly, one day at a time." He paused. "She's still fighting. She'll be back. What I'm asking you today is not to save Lantern House for her. She already saved it. She saved it every day for 6 years by refusing to let it go. I'm asking you to make sure it's here when she gets back." The response was not one dramatic moment. It was dozens of small ones: a check written at the donation table, a pledge form signed, a local contractor announcing a free annual maintenance agreement, a teacher from a neighboring school signing up for a space partnership. None of it was cinematic. All of it was real. Grant stood near the back of the room through most of it. At 2:45, Noah saw him lean toward his attorney and exchange words. The attorney looked at the room, at the number of people at the documentation table where Caleb was sitting with the financial files, and Patricia Osei standing beside him, and said something back to Grant. Whatever it was, Grant's jaw tightened. At 3 p.m., Grant walked to the center of the room. The room went quiet, with the particular quiet of a room that senses confrontation. Grant looked around at the assembled community with the assured manner of a man who has prepared his position and intends to deliver it from high ground. He spoke about instability, about the burden of an under-resourced center on a community that had real economic needs, about responsible stewardship, about the medical uncertainty surrounding the current director. Then he looked at Noah directly and said, "And this man who nobody in this room knew 2 weeks ago has positioned himself at the center of a situation he has no right to be in. He's exploited a tragedy to play the hero. He has no stake in this community, no history with this organization, and no standing to make decisions that affect all of you." The room was very quiet. Noah stood up. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't use the language of confrontation. He spoke the way he always spoke, directly, plainly, without performance. "He's right that I had no history here 2 weeks ago," he said. "He's right that I disappeared from Hannah's life for 17 years. I told myself it was respectful. I told myself she had made her choice and I was honoring it. But the truth is, I was afraid. Afraid that going back would mean facing what I'd let go. Afraid that staying would cost me something I wasn't sure I was prepared to give." He paused. "My failure 17 years ago, that's mine to carry. But it does not give you permission to erase what she built." He looked at the room. "This is your community. This is your center. What happens to it today is your decision. I'm just the person who showed up." Patricia Osei started to clap. It started there and moved through the room the way things move through rooms when they're genuine, imperfectly, unevenly, but unstoppably. Grant stood in the center of it. His attorney leaned in and said something to him. Grant's composed expression finally broke not into anger, but into something smaller and more honest. The look of a man who has just understood that the room has made its decision, and his position in it has changed permanently. He left at 3:27 p.m. His attorney followed. The two briefcase men went last. Noah watched them go from across the room. Then his phone rang. He looked at the screen. St. Catherine Medical Center. He stepped outside, immediately pressing the phone to his ear, and his heart was doing something he had no clinical term for, a combination of dread and hope that is one of the more specific experiences available to human beings. "Mr. Bennett," the voice said. It was a nurse he recognized. "I'm calling from Hannah's floor. Dr. Patel wanted us to reach you right away." "Is she?" "She's awake," the nurse said. "She woke up about 20 minutes ago. She's confused and she's weak and the assessment is ongoing, but she's awake and she's talking. And her first question—" The nurse paused, and Noah heard something warm in her professional voice. Her first question was about her daughter. Noah stood outside Lantern House with the phone in his hand and the sounds of the community event behind him, and Portland's November air, cold against his face, and he pressed the heel of his free hand against his eye for exactly 3 seconds. Then he went back inside. Lily was at the donation table helping Caleb sort pledge forms. She looked up when he came through the entrance, and she must have seen something in his face because she went very still. "Noah," she said. He crossed the room to her. He crouched down to her level the way you do with children when the news is important enough to require that you be at the same height. "She's awake," he said. Lily stared at him. "She woke up 20 minutes ago. She's talking. The first thing she asked about was you." Lily's green eyes. Hannah's green eyes filled completely. "Can I see her?" she asked. "Get your jacket," he said. She was already moving. Lily ran the last 20 feet of the hospital corridor. Not because anyone told her to. Not because Noah was walking fast. He was actually walking at a careful pace, aware that the nurse had said Hannah was weak and confused, and that bursting into the room at full speed was probably not what the medical team had in mind. But Lily knew where her mother's room was because she had been thinking about it every single day for 12 days, and when they turned the corner and she could see the door, her body made a decision without consulting her. She pushed through the door. Noah stopped in the corridor. He stood outside the room and listened. He heard Lily say, "Mom," just that one word, and the way she said it contained everything that 12 days of controlled, careful, remarkably disciplined courage had been holding back. And then he heard Hannah's voice for the first time, weak, slower than he remembered it slightly. Unsteady at the edges, saying, "Hey baby, hey, I'm here." And then there was no more talking for a while. Noah stood in the corridor with his back against the wall and his arms crossed over his chest, and he looked at the ceiling, and he let the moment belong entirely to the two of them. Caleb had stayed behind at Lantern House to finish coordinating the event and to meet with Patricia Osei about next steps. Mrs. Chen was handling the donation final count. The world was continuing to operate. In this corridor for this moment, none of that mattered. After several minutes, a nurse came out of the room and almost ran into him. "Oh, Mr. Bennett." "Yes." "Dr. Patel said you could go in when you're ready. Just keep it calm. She's processing a lot right now." "I'll keep it calm," he said. He waited another 5 minutes. Then he knocked on the doorframe and pushed it open. Lily was on the edge of the hospital bed, sitting beside Hannah, holding her hand with both of hers in the grip of someone who has decided they are not letting go for a considerable period of time. Hannah was propped up slightly on the pillows. She was pale, and she was thinner, and there were shadows under her eyes that hadn't been there in the photographs on Lantern House's bulletin board. But her eyes were open, and when they found Noah's face in the doorway, something moved through them that he recognized even after 17 years. "Noah," she said, just his name, the way she used to say it when they were 17, like it was a complete sentence. He came in and pulled the chair to the side of her bed and sat down, because standing felt too formal for what this was. Lily glanced at him sideways and then went back to looking at her mother with the intensity of someone conducting a thorough personal inspection to confirm everything was actually intact. "You look terrible," Noah said to Hannah. Lily made a sound of protest. Hannah almost smiled. 12 days unconscious will do that. "The hair especially," he said. "Noah," Lily said sharply. "It's okay," Hannah said, and this time the smile fully formed, tired and slightly lopsided, but genuine. "He's right." She looked at him and the smile softened into something more complicated and more honest. "You're here." "I'm here," he said. "How long have you been here in Portland, I mean? How long have you been—" She stopped and seemed to be working through something recalibrating. "Marisol, the social worker. She told me just now." She looked at Lily. "She said you've been with Lily." 12 days, he said. Hannah stared at him. "The whole time?" she asked. "The whole time." She absorbed this. Her eyes went from him to Lily and back to him, and he could see her doing what she had always done, reading everything carefully, taking it in, processing it at a depth that most people didn't bother with. "Lantern House," she said. "Still standing," he said. "The fundraiser was today. It's still going, actually. Caleb is there." She went completely still at the name. "Caleb," she said. Very quiet. "He drove up when he heard about the accident," Noah said. "He's been here. He found the gap in the donor accounts the money Grant moved. It's documented. Grant has been suspended by the board, and an attorney is building a fraud case." He paused. "And the roof is fixed." Hannah looked at him. "The roof," she said. "East section replacement and new flashing on the dormers. The entrance drainage is resolved. The electrical panels are updated. The window seats in the reading room have new screws, and the finish is solid." He held her gaze. It needed attention. It got it. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I'm angry at you." Lily looked up sharply. "Okay," Noah said. "You made decisions about my center without me. You organized things, you moved resources, you spoke at a community event on behalf of an organization that I run." Her voice was weak, but the directness was completely intact. "I know you had to. I know there was no other option. But I need you to know that I'm aware of it." "That's fair," he said. "I'm also—" She stopped, looked at their joined hands, Lily's hands around hers. "I'm also aware that I'm in a hospital bed, and Lily is sitting here, and Lantern House is still open, and those things are directly because of what you did." She looked at him with those green eyes. "So I'm grateful, and I'm angry, and I don't know what to do with both of those things at the same time." "You don't have to do anything with them right now," he said. "You just woke up. Take your time." "I'm bad at taking my time," she said. "I know," he said. "I remember." Something shifted in her face at the acknowledgement of shared history, the 17 years of knowing each other that still existed somewhere underneath all the time and distance. "The letter," she said. He reached into his jacket pocket and placed it on the blanket beside her hand. The folded paper worn at the creases from being carried for 12 days. She looked at it without touching it. "Lily found it," he said. "She gave it to me." Hannah looked at her daughter. Lily met her eyes with the direct steadiness that was entirely her own, but also entirely Hannah's. "I should have sent it," Hannah said quietly. "Yes," he said. "You should have." "I was ashamed." "I know. Mrs. Garfield told me." He paused. "Hannah, if you had sent it, I would have come the same night I got it. There is no version of that where I read your letter and don't come." She closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, they were wet. "I didn't know that," she said. I thought you'd built a whole life. I thought you'd moved on properly the way I should have. I thought calling you would be—" She stopped. "Selfish," he said. "Yes." "Asking for help is not selfish," he said. "Especially not from someone who promised you he'd come." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "Why did you stay the whole 12 days? Lily, the building, all of it. You could have handed it off to Marisol after day 1 and driven back to your life." Noah thought about Mrs. Garfield saying she chose the right person. He thought about Lily, leaning her head against his arm on the floor of the reading room. He thought about Caleb on the roof in work clothes that didn't fit the job, methodical and careful and trying. He thought about what the unfinished letter had said. Love is not possession, it is staying. When leaving would be easier. Because walking away would have made me someone I no longer wanted to be, he said. She held his gaze. And in the silence of that hospital room with Lily between them and the machines making their steady sounds and the daylight fading outside the window, Hannah Whitmore understood something she had been circling for 17 years. "I'm glad you answered the phone," she said. "I almost didn't," he said. "I know," she said. "That makes it mean more." The weeks that followed were not easy, and the story would be dishonest if it pretended they were. Hannah's recovery was slow. Real recovery always is. There were headaches that arrived without warning and lasted for hours. There were days when her balance was unreliable, and the frustration of that was written clearly on her face. There were memory gaps, small ones, specific ones, the kind that are more disorienting than large ones because they appear in the middle of ordinary moments. She would reach for a word she always knew and find empty space where it used to be. She would start a sentence and lose the thread. She handled these moments with the same quiet ferocity she brought to everything, but they cost her. She also struggled with dependence. Hannah had been managing everything: Lily Lantern House, her finances, her health, the ongoing battle against Grant's encroachment by herself for years. Having people step in while she was incapacitated and make decisions she would normally have made herself, however, necessarily sat uneasily with her. She was grateful. She was also complicated about the gratitude, in the way that independent people are always complicated about gratitude when it requires them to admit they needed help. She told Noah this plainly about 3 weeks after waking up when he came to the apartment for dinner, and she had clearly been working through something all day. "I feel like I owe you something I can't repay," she said, "and I hate that feeling." "You don't owe me anything," he said. "That's easy for you to say." "Hannah." He set down his fork and looked at her directly. "I didn't stay so that you would owe me something. I stayed because walking away would have made me someone I no longer wanted to be. The debt you're feeling, that's not real. That's your particular brand of pride talking, which I say with complete respect because I have the same brand." She looked at him. "I have the version where I left instead of asking to stay," he said. "You have the version where you wouldn't ask for help because it felt like weakness. We've both been managing the same fear in different directions for 17 years. She was quiet for a long moment. Lily came through the kitchen, grabbed an apple, and disappeared back to her room with the practiced invisibility of a child who knows when the adults are having an important conversation and has decided to give them room for it. "I didn't stop loving you," Hannah said. "After high school. I want you to know that. I told myself I did for a long time because it was easier, but I didn't." "I know," he said. "I didn't either." "We wasted a lot of time," she said. "We did," he agreed. "But I'm not interested in spending more time being sorry about the time we wasted. I'm more interested in what we do with what's left." She looked at him across the kitchen table, and what moved through her face was something that the past 12 days, the hospital and the fundraiser and the fraud investigation and all of it had been slowly clearing the way for. Not a conclusion exactly, more like a beginning that had finally found its right starting place. "Okay," she said. "Okay. Okay," she said again. And this time, there was something in it that was not agreement to a specific proposal, but agreement to something larger and less defined and more important. It was enough. Grant Keller's story ended not dramatically, but appropriately. The fraud case built by Caleb's documentation and the attorney's investigation resulted in a formal complaint to the State Attorney General's office. The process was slow, as legal processes are, but the board had voted unanimously to remove him. The board seats were restructured so that no single external party could hold leveraged debt over the organization again. And Gerald Foss, who had looked at Dennis Park's structural report, and then at what Noah's volunteer crew had accomplished, and then at the community that had filled Lantern House on the day of the fundraiser, had signed a revised lease agreement with terms that protected the center's long-term stability. Grant did not go to prison, at least not quickly. but he lost everything he had been trying to gain, which was influence and standing in a community that now knew precisely what he was. Real punishment rarely looks like a movie. It tends to look like the slow withdrawal of the respect that someone spent years performing their way into. Caleb stayed. That was the part that surprised people who knew the history. He stayed in Portland. He found an apartment 2 miles from Hannah's. He volunteered at Lantern House on weekends, managing the financial records with the same methodical precision he had brought to dismantling Grant's fraud. He and Hannah did not immediately become what they had been 6 years, is a long silence, and the words that were said in the argument that caused it did not disappear. But they had conversations. Difficult ones, honest ones, the kind that require sitting with discomfort long enough to get to the other side of it. Hannah did not forgive him quickly. She told him directly that forgiveness was not something she could manufacture on a timeline that suited his guilt. He told her he understood, and then he came back the next Saturday and did the work, and the Saturday after that. It was Lily who moved first, as children sometimes do, because children have not yet learned to protect themselves from the vulnerability of reconnection. She asked Caleb one afternoon if he wanted to see the reading room, and she showed him the window seat that Hannah had sanded and that Noah had refitted, and she told him about the book she was currently reading, and Caleb listened with the whole attention of a man who has learned at significant cost that listening is not passive. 6 weeks after waking up, Hannah returned to Lantern House as director. She restructured it the way people restructure things when they have nearly lost them and understand from the inside what made them fragile. She built a real board with genuine community representation. She created a deputy director position and hired Mrs. Chen, who had been functioning as one for years without the title or the salary. She brought Caleb in as a financial consultant, paid with a formal agreement and defined responsibilities. She established a maintenance partnership with Noah's contracting business, not a personal favor, a professional contract with terms and accountability. She did all of this carefully and deliberately because she understood that Lantern House's survival could not depend on one exhausted person's refusal to let go. She had built it that way for 6 years, and it had nearly destroyed her. She rebuilt it to last. 8 months after the night Noah answered a phone call he almost didn't take, Lantern House had its official reopening. The roof was solid. The entrance was clean and accessible. There were 2 proper classrooms, a reading room with bookshelves organized by Lily's idiosyncratic system that somehow worked for everyone, and a small garden visible through the back windows that a group of parents had planted in the spring. Above the entrance, on a small wooden plaque that Noah had made himself, were the words, "No one should feel unwanted here." He had used the original teenage model as his reference. The proportions were slightly more accurate than the model. But he had kept the same slightly imperfect roofline deliberately, because some imperfections are part of the story and should not be corrected. The day of the reopening, Lily had a school presentation. Her class had been assigned to present on the subject of family. Most of her classmates made family trees. Standard ones. Grandparents at the top, parents in the middle, children at the bottom. Lily made a drawing of Lantern House instead. In each window of the building she had written a name: Hannah Caleb, Mrs. Chen Marisol, Mrs. Garfield, Patricia Osei, James Tran Petra Dennis, and others. In the front doorway she had written Noah. When she presented it, a classmate asked, "Is Noah your dad?" Lily looked at the drawing for a moment. "No," she said. "He's the person my mom trusted before she knew she would need him. And he's the person who came." That evening at the reopening, Hannah found Noah in the garden. She was carrying something wrapped in cloth, the wooden box. She set it on the bench beside him and sat down and opened it. She took out the model and held it for a moment, turning it in her hands the way both of them had turned it over the past 8 months at different moments for different reasons. Then she reached inside the box and took out a small card. "This is the emergency contact form," she said. "The actual one, from St. Catherine's." She held it out to him. "Marisol helped me get a copy. I've been carrying it for a while, trying to figure out what to do with it." He took it. He looked at it. His name and number typed in the designated field. Updated as the nurse had told him that first night within the last year. "I want you to know why I put your name there," she said. Not because you were the only option. I had other people I could have listed. People who were easier to call, people who were already in my daily life. She looked at him steadily. I put your name because you were the one person I had ever met who understood that love is not about ownership. That caring about someone means making space for who they actually are, not who you need them to be. I put your name because 17 years ago, you built me a model of something I barely knew how to want yet. And I understood from that moment that you were someone who listened at a level most people never bother with. She paused. And I put your name because I always believed somewhere that if things ever got bad enough, you would come. He looked at the form in his hands. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and took out a pen, the same kind of cheap ballpoint he carried on job sites, and he looked at Hannah, who nodded once, and he wrote Lily's name below his own, in the space below the primary contact field. Under both names, in the small line for relationship to patient, he wrote one word: family. Hannah looked at it for a long moment. Then she closed her hand around his. They stayed in the garden while the voices of the community moved through the building behind them. Children and parents and volunteers and board members and neighbors, all of them inside the place that Hannah had built and nearly lost and rebuilt better, filling it with exactly the kind of noise a place called Lantern House is supposed to contain. A year after the night. Noah answered the phone. He stood with Hannah and Lily on the completed porch of Lantern House as November rain began to fall over Portland. He had once believed that keeping a promise meant showing up at a hospital on one frightening night. He understood now that the promise had never been about that night. Showing up once can make someone a hero. Showing up the next morning, and the morning after that, and every ordinary morning after that, remembering which cereal, writing the note on the pink post-it, checking the closet, sitting on the floor of an unfinished room with a frightened child, and not saying everything will be okay, because you cannot promise that. Only promising what you can actually keep, that is what makes someone family. Not blood, not paperwork, not a single dramatic moment. Ordinary days chosen, again and again and